And welcome to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case.
And I'm Renata Kish.
And tonight, Republicans demand answers on Biden's mental health.
Meanwhile, AOC issues impeachment articles for Supreme Court justices.
And NATO puts Ukraine on an irreversible path to membership.
But first, let's start with President Biden and the growing number of Democrats who are unhappy with his presidential bid. The first Democrat senator has come forward publicly calling Biden to step aside. That congressman is Vermont Senator Peter Welch, who said, quote, "The stakes couldn't be higher." Meanwhile, there are now 9 House Democrats voicing their disagreement with the president's decision to stay in the race. This comes just weeks before the National Democratic Convention, where Biden was supposed to be nominated as a presidential candidate. But politicians aren't the only ones getting impatient. Prominent Democrat celebrity donor George Clooney is also calling for Biden to step aside. Yesterday, Clooney wrote in a New York Times op-ed that the Democrats will lose in November if they keep Biden. He added that on top of that, Democrats will also lose the House and the Senate. Clooney said that this isn't only his opinion, but the opinions of Congress members as well.
At the same time, House Republicans are now seeking information concerning the White House's alleged efforts to hide President Biden's mental decline from the American public. Yesterday, the House Oversight Committee subpoenaed 3 senior White House aides, requesting closed-door interviews with them later this month. Those aides are First Lady Jill Biden's top aide, Anthony Bernal, Deputy Chief of Staff Annie Tomasini, and Senior Advisor Ashley Williams. Oversight Chair James Comer claims that these 3 were the ones, quote, pulling the strings at the White House.
These 3 people, their names keep popping up as the gatekeepers, in addition to Hunter Biden. But these 3 employees of the White House are the ones that have shielded the president from the press. They've shielded members of Congress from meeting with the president. They lead him around. They write cue cards out that says, sit down, stand up, smile, walk away after you give your statement.
Biden officials have since confirmed to Axios that despite their lower profile, all 3 of them are highly influential inside the White House.
We have a lot of questions for these people because I think the American people all are in agreement now that Joe Biden isn't fit to serve as president. And we want to know how long he's been in this condition and why they've been a part of what I think is one of the biggest cover-ups in our nation's history.
Comer has now given them until July 17th to respond.
Meanwhile, Democrats are trying to focus on a whole other topic, presumably to make Republicans look bad ahead of the 2024 elections. Here's FISM's Ian Patrick with the details.
Well, perhaps it's the constant focus on President Biden's health and mental state, but it seems like Democrats are trying to find a new talking point on Republicans. The latest effort is focusing on a conservative policy outline known as Project 2025. Helmed by the Heritage Foundation, Project 2025 is described as, quote, the conservative movement's unified effort to be ready for the next conservative administration. Working on the assumption that former President Trump will win this year's election, the goal of this 2025 agenda is, quote, to assemble an army of aligned, vetted, trained, and prepared conservatives to go to work on day one to deconstruct the administrative state. The collection of policy suggestions are divided into 4 pillars of ideas. The first details how federal agencies and the executive branch of government should be governed from a conservative perspective. The second pillar allows for conservative opinions and ideas from people like you and I to be garnered and then shared with the president-elect's team. The third pillar offers an online educational system to explain government functions and how to effectively function within the government. This is meant to train newcomers, while seasoned conservatives are given in-person seminars to hone skills of senior leadership. And the fourth and final pillar aims to form agency teams and transition plans to help the president take meaningful, conservatively minded actions. These suggestions are the work of over 400 scholars and policy experts in the conservative movement nationwide. And it's billed by the Heritage Foundation as the, quote, last opportunity to save our republic. But Democrats are pointing to some of the more specific policy suggestions, claiming that they have dangerous implications. For example, Democrat Representative Eric Swalwell tried to corner conservative commentator Ben Shapiro during a recent hearing on the matter. The topic of the hearing had to do with Shapiro's company, The Daily Wire, allegedly being negatively targeted by a worldwide advertising company. But Swalwell took his opportunity to try and pin Shapiro as an extreme conservative who agrees with the extreme ideals of Project 2025 in his view. And that didn't go very well.
From your perspective, I think it would help us understand, on just like a scale of 0 to 100%, how much do you support Project 2025?
I think, like President Trump, I haven't looked all that deeply at Project 2025, but it seems that Democrats on this committee, sort of like Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, if they say Project 2025 enough, their presidential candidate becomes alive again.
You probably want less bureaucracy, right?
I do.
I want less bureaucracy. You want more efficiency.
I do.
I want more efficiency. You want taxpayer money spent wisely.
I do. Congrats on becoming a Republican.
Yeah. Yeah. My parents would be proud.
But the focus on Project 2025 seems to still be taking hold, at least among Democrat circles. In fact, recently, a group of self-described gay furry hackers announced that they have stolen gigabytes of data from the Heritage Foundation. They reportedly stole this data to unveil who is financially supporting the foundation and dox them to the world. The data trove reportedly contains full names, email addresses, passwords, and usernames of people who have interacted with Heritage. But despite the consistent criticism and fear-mongering against them, Heritage Foundation maintains that their policy outline is nothing short of a focus on conservative values for the betterment of America. Project 2025 even issued a statement on X in which they correct some of the myths about its specific policies, and where they explicitly say that they are, quote, not affiliated with former President Donald Trump. Many Democrats had claimed that the two were essentially one in the same. The entirety of the policy outline can be read on the Heritage Foundation website. This is Ian Patrick reporting for FISM News.
Thanks so much for going into the details on that, Ian. That's something we've been hearing quite a lot about this week, so we're glad you cleared some of those things up. Meanwhile, Democrats are continuing their attacks on the Supreme Court. Yesterday, Progressive Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez introduced articles of impeachment against conservative justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, alleging, in her words, unchecked corruption.
Against Justice Thomas, the resolution includes 3 total articles. 1 count of failure to disclose financial income, gifts, reimbursements, property interest liabilities, and transactions, among other information, and 2 counts of refusal to recuse from matters concerning his spouse's legal and financial interests before the court. The second resolution includes the following impeachment articles against Justice Alito. 1 count of refusal to recuse from cases in which he had a personal bias or prejudice concerning a party before the court, and 1 count of failure to disclose financial incomes, gifts, reimbursements, property interests, among other information.
Republicans are saying it's an effort to delegitimize the Supreme Court. Last week, AOC vowed to file impeachment articles following the court's ruling on presidential immunity, claiming the court has, quote, become consumed by a corruption crisis beyond its control. The ruling also prompted attacks from President Biden.
This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation. From gutting voting rights and civil rights, to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law of this nation.
Both Thomas and Alito deny wrongdoing, and the Supreme Court has not responded to the articles as of yet, which are unlikely to go anywhere at this time.
Meanwhile, the House passed a proof of citizenship bill for voter registration yesterday. The vote happened largely along party lines, with 5 Democrats voting in favor of the legislation. The Biden administration strongly opposed the measure, saying there are laws already in place to block non-citizens from voting. But for Republicans, election integrity has been a huge talking point since former President Trump claimed that Democrats allow illegal immigrants into the country to boost liberal electability. Meanwhile, Democrat Representative Summer Lee said Republicans passing the election security bill is a xenophobic attack.
Republicans want to throw up barriers because when people vote, they lose. Let me be clear. They don't want you to vote. They don't want to hear black voices, brown voices, LGBTQIA voices, young voices. Our fundamental access to our democracy is being politicized. And this xenophobic attack that we're debating today will make it harder for Americans to vote.
Nevertheless, the conservative narrative may not just be fear-mongering. According to the New York Post, 46 states do not require proof of citizenship for voter registration. The news outlet also said that millions of migrants receive public benefits, which would bring them to offices that register people to vote.
And moving from the House now to the Senate, where Republicans successfully blocked a Democrat bill meant to enshrine abortion into federal law. Yesterday, the so-called Reproductive Freedom for Women Act failed to break the Senate filibuster with a final vote of 49-44. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine were the only two Republicans who voted in favor of the bill, which aimed to codify Roe v. Wade at the federal level. South Dakota Republican John Thune said the bill was nothing more than a show vote with, quote, no possibility of ever becoming law. All right, and up next, we'll turn to some international news where NATO says that Ukraine is on what they call an irreversible path to membership. The details on that story and so much more after this short break. Stay tuned.
My name is Valtasia. I have 5 kids total. I was basically a single mom. I didn't have an address to my name. And here it comes, that not just one baby I'm finna have, it was 3. I honestly was not gonna keep them. I had it in my mind, deep down inside, that I couldn't do it. I came straight abortion minded. What changed my mind was I talked to the counselor and, very encouraging. They'll also tell me, you're not going to be alone. If you need anything, reach out to us or anything. I was amazed. I definitely have a challenge of having my babies. A lot of people will ask me, how do you do that? How do you maintain? Only thing I could say is prayer. Prayer really, really worked.
To donate, just dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or go to financialissues.org and click on the preborn banner.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay, or to go, to remain the same, or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
And welcome back to FISM News. Well, let's continue with this. Yesterday, White House officials announced that new enforcement mechanisms will be put in place to strengthen Trump-era tariffs against Chinese steel and aluminum. Officials claim that Chinese firms have avoided paying the tariffs by shipping products to Mexico and then importing them into the U.S. Under the new procedure, importers from Mexico will be required to prove their place of origin to avoid paying. Officials believe that roughly 13% of steel and 6% of aluminum imported from Mexico originated from outside the country. Despite the low numbers, the Biden administration has claimed that the move was to prevent that number from increasing. The move comes as Biden attempts to prove his toughness against Chinese manufacturing, but despite this, many have claimed the move was not enough. Ohio Democrat Senator Sherrod Brown criticized Biden on social media, saying that we need to reinstate tariffs on Mexican steel until their imports are back to sustainable levels.
And turning now to all the updates on the ongoing NATO summit in D.C., where Canada's Defense Minister Bill Blair says his country is now buying up to 12 new submarines in order to bolster NATO's defense. In a statement released yesterday, Blair said, quote, "This new fleet will enable Canada to protect its sovereignty in a changing world and make valuable high-end contributions to the security of our partners and NATO allies." The announcement comes amid criticism over Canada's failure to reach NATO's defense spending target of 2% GDP, something that Blair actually admitted to earlier this week.
I'm one of the larger economies in the NATO alliance. We have the 6th largest military even today, but we are not at 2%, and we've got work to do to get there.
Canada currently spends about 1.37% of its GDP on defense, which House Speaker Mike Johnson says is downright shameful.
Shamefully, Canada announced in the last few days, or last couple of days, that they won't be ponying up. They're not going to do their 2%. Why? Well, talk about riding on America's coattails. They have the safety and security of being on our border and not having to worry about that. I think that's shameful. I think if you're going to be a member nation and participant, you need to do your part.
Likewise, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said it's time for our northern ally to invest seriously in the hard power required to help preserve prosperity and security across NATO.
And still in the news with NATO, yesterday the alliance announced that Ukraine's future is in NATO. Here's NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg announcing Ukraine's future membership.
All allies agree that Ukraine will become a member, but it's too early to say exactly when that will happen. What I can say is that we are moving together with Ukraine closer and closer to NATO membership, and we do that by concrete actions.
NATO wrote that the Eastern European country has met the requirements for democratic, economic, and security reforms, and a statement said that the group will extend an invitation to Ukraine when allies agree and when conditions are met. NATO also said that they will continue to support Ukraine's progress in democratic and security reforms, which will be assessed annually. The decision comes as the alliance argued that Russia poses a long-term threat to NATO nations. However, the Euro-Atlantic Alliance added that it does not seek confrontation and poses no threat to Russia. They affirmed their continued commitment to open communication with Moscow to prevent escalation.
And while NATO is meeting in Washington this week, Russia also hosted a meeting of its own. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a 3-day trip to Moscow in his first visit since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. He was seen on Monday giving a huge hug to Russian President Vladimir Putin and was even quoted as calling Russia a trusted friend. The State Department responded to this news, saying that India is well aware of U.S. concerns regarding Russia.
We've made quite clear directly with India our concerns about their relationship with Russia, and so we would hope India and any other country, when they engage with Russia, would make clear that Russia should respect the UN Charter, should respect Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
India has increased Russian oil imports by 20-fold since the start of the war in Ukraine, basically helping fund Putin's war effort over there. A longer-term oil deal is currently in the works.
Meanwhile, in the Middle East, Israel has ordered the evacuation of Gaza City residents amid a new offensive in the region. The IDF says it has been targeting regrouped Hamas fighters in Gaza. The Israeli military dropped leaflets in Gaza City urging Palestinians to take 2 safe routes south, as Gaza City will remain a dangerous combat zone. This comes as Israel continues negotiations with Egypt and Qatar on a long-term ceasefire deal. The AP says that Israel's recent heavy strikes could be a way to pressure Hamas into a deal that would end in the release of the remaining Israeli hostages. IDF military chief Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi confirmed that they aim to put pressure on the militant group as the IDF attacks Hamas on multiple fronts. The White House has been pressuring all negotiating parties to close on a ceasefire deal soon, as President Biden seeks to regain trust in his leadership and the Democratic Party. And up next, millions in Texas remain without power in the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. But first, let's go to Seth Yudinsky for a moment in history.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Yudinsky. In American history, there are certain subcultures that arose in the 19th century, one such that has been bolstered by legend and mystique. Similar to the mystique of the pirate culture in the 18th century, this subculture has been romanticized by movies and novels. However, it also carries with it the heart of the American experience, born out of the great westward expansion of the 19th century. In this moment in history, let's explore just for a moment the legends and the truth surrounding the Wild West of America. The foundations of the Wild West were laid with the Louisiana Purchase in the early 1800s, where Thomas Jefferson brilliantly doubled the nation's size in a shrewd deal with France. Over the next several decades, a westward expansion began, which coincided with the advent of railway travel in the nation. Now, the real beginning of the Wild West was in many ways the California gold rush of the late 1840s. Here we see many of the staples of what became known as the Wild West culture, outlaws and adventurers seeking gold and riches in far west reaches of the nation. Now, we need to make mention of another aspect of the Wild West, and that's cowboy culture. The American cowboy is in many ways a fusion of Spanish and American influences in the American Southwest, in lands that were once part of the Spanish Empire, and then Mexico, and finally the United States. These men were cattle farmers with roots going back to the 16th century settlement of the region by the Spanish. In the 1800s, cowboy culture dominated the landscape of the West. Saloons, showdowns, lawlessness, and of course, the famous train heists were all too commonplace. One of the most famous of these men was the outlaw Jesse James, a Confederate veteran of the Civil War who made his fortune after the war as a thief. Now, he was a guerrilla warrior during the war, and he took the same attitude with him after. Now, as the western reaches of the country were industrialized and somewhat tamed in many ways, cowboy culture began to be more tame with it, resulting in far fewer movie-style gunfights and train robberies. However, southwestern farmers and ranchers still remain in the region to this day as part of a unique subculture in the story of American history. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
Do you want to invest in biblically responsible stocks? Financial Issues can help. For only $132 per year, our team of experts will help you make wise decisions with your money and guide you to successful investments that will not dishonor God. You'll also have access to our Portfolio Tracker tool, which will help you keep an eye on your asset allocations, and our Buys and Sells page, which will give you valuable information about biblically responsible stocks. Being a Financial Issues partner is the best way to invest in accordance with biblical values. Make the most of your money by becoming a partner today. Sign up at financialissues.org. That's financialissues.org.
Hi, I'm Aisha. At first, I was debating whether or not I was really pregnant and took a test. While I was waiting, they talked to me about different pregnancy choices and different options and information that helped me be more educated. To confirm, I got an ultrasound of the pregnancy test, and it was for sure positive, and I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry, and it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
And welcome back to FISM News. I'm Renata Kish. Well, let's continue with some weather updates here once again. Texas officials are facing criticism as millions of residents in the Houston area are still without power. Houston Mayor John Whitmire blamed the utility company CenterPoint Energy and publicly called on the company to do more to restore power. In a statement, CenterPoint Energy defended itself from negligence claims, noting that it had restored power for nearly half of all affected residents within 2 days. Criticism of the company has extended beyond local residents, as Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick are now among the critics as well. Now, the statement comes as both Abbott and Patrick themselves face criticism from the Biden administration for their response to the disaster. President Biden accused the two officials of not responding to offers or federal aid. Both men have since denied the allegations.
And while that's going on down in Texas, record high temperatures are leading to massive forest fires across the state of California as well. Yesterday, officials in Santa Barbara County warned that a forest fire near the Los Padres National Forest, it's known as the Lake Fire, has grown to nearly 30,000 acres, forcing authorities there to evacuate over 1,500 people. And that's just one of 3,500 fires this season alone, and only one of 19 that are currently currently burning as we speak. It comes as states across the western U.S. continue to see record high temperatures, as yesterday Las Vegas saw its 8th consecutive day of temperatures hitting a scorching 110 degrees. More than 150 million Americans still remain under some sort of heat alert. Officials are also warning that the heat wave will spread to parts of the Midwest and East Coast as well, with temperatures in New York and Philadelphia expected to reach more than 100 degrees this week.
Well, meanwhile, CNN is cutting about 100 jobs, nearly 3% of its workforce, as it faces flagging viewership and revenue. Those job cuts come from an overhaul of its newsroom, and it comes as the network subscriber base is projected to fall to 66 million viewers this year, a 5% decline. CEO Mark Thompson unveiled a new digital strategy yesterday that won't rely on traditional TV watchers. Its latest attempt, CNN Plus, was shut down within a month of launching. But the CEO says they will create 2 free ad-supported products by the end of this year. He says they will focus on developing digital experiences worth paying for.
That's the hope, isn't it? Meanwhile, along with milk and eggs, pretty soon you might be able to add bullets to your grocery list. A company called American Rounds is now installing ammunition-filled vending machines in grocery stores across multiple states. And beyond being just convenient, the company also says these vending machines are actually much safer than the way ammo is typically sold.
With our machines, as you can see here, we have a very secure automated retail machine. We're able to age verify. We scan a driver's license. It then takes 360 facial recognition for the purchase and matches it to the ID. So the machines really provide an opportunity for safe, affordable, and available ammunition sales.
According to the AP, the company already has 1 machine in Alabama, 4 of them in Oklahoma, and 1 in Texas. They're going to add another one in Texas very soon, as well as 1 in Colorado in the coming weeks.
And lastly, in some rather fascinating news, archaeologists have found 5 musket balls dating back to 1775, when colonial Americans confronted British troops in the event that became known as the Shot Heard Around the World. The 250-year-old musket balls were recently found at Minuteman National Historical Park in Massachusetts during archaeological compliance activities. According to early analysis, the musket balls were fired by colonials at the North Bridge fight in Concord, which was the prelude to the American Revolutionary War. Archaeologists found the ammunition near where British soldiers lined up to block the river crossing, and later analysis indicated that the musket balls were fired from across the river and that they did not drop during reloading. Minuteman Park Ranger Gerard Fouas, who is also a historic weapons specialist, said that it's incredible that we can stand here and hold what amounts to just a few seconds of history that changed our world almost 250 years ago.
It is really incredible that they found that.
Remarkable, really. Well, that's our program for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please visit FISMnews.tv for more content.
And for more updates until our next show, you can check us out on social media, or you can download the FISM app. Thanks so much, and God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow night with more news coverage. See you then.